And I would just suggest to any of you, as you talk to, when you visit China, when you talk to government officials and regulators, please don't hesitate to make that point clear.
Okay, this question actually is appropriate since our next panel is about attracting the best and the brightest talent. So-called war for talent is acute, particularly in financial services sector in China. How does Citigroup compete in terms of hiring and retaining talent?
I think it's true that there's a tremendous competition going on for talent, and I think that what you have to do is to show your employees that their career development plans in place and outline to them their future. Obviously, you've got to pay them properly, but more importantly, I think in many ways, is to show them what kind of career path they have. And there's no doubt as the banking system opens up and expands, I think the competition will even be more intense.
Okay. As China has become wealthier and more closely tied to Hong Kong, have you seen any improvement in the integrity and efficiency of the government and judicial system?
Another very good question. I think there are a number of people in the government at the state council level who feel that Hong Kong is a very good example for the People's Republic. And I think that the experiences there of the integration between Hong Kong and China are very, very important. Li Mingkong, as an example, in CBRC, has as one of his chief advisors the former head of the Securities Authority in Hong Kong. And I think this is an example of how a number of people at state council level are drawing on the expertise of Hong Kong. And I think that's very, very positive. So the more I think that China draws on the experiences of Hong Kong, the better off things will be. I'm a big exponent of that.
Okay, and this is more about your expansion. How quickly might consumer banking and financial services ramp up in China, and will Chinese banks be given an advantage over foreign-owned banks?
Well, I think you always have the case where there's a tendency to give preference to local institutions. Now, if you talk to the Chinese banks, they'll say, you know, here, the government of China is allowing you to open branches, and we can't open any branches here. And so you've got to have the reciprocity that's there. Now, you talk to the authorities, they'll say, well, we've been slow because we've been concerned about the non-performing loans. But there has to be reciprocity. But you're always going to have, I think, the element of nationalism, but it's got to be maintained at a controllable level. And as I said, the relationship between the two countries is very, very important. And we've got to be very sensitive to both protectionism and nationalism. On the last question, I should add one other thing. You mentioned Hong Kong, but China also looks a lot to Singapore as well as China. I mean, when they decided to unhinge the fixed rate in July of '05, they sent people down to the Singapore Monetary Authority. So I think that Hong Kong is there, and the tendency, correctly so, will be to use Hong Kong primarily, but they are also looking at Singapore. And I'll give you another example. When the government forms this new sector that they're putting together to make investments outside of China, because as you know, China now has $1.2 trillion in reserves, and they want some diversification. So they're going to take a small chunk of that, and what they're going to do is to put that in the hands of a group to invest, and they are looking very much at the experience of Singapore in doing that. So China is drawing on, as I said, primarily Hong Kong, but also looking to the experiences in Singapore.
I think I have a last question as we've now approached 9 o'clock. I just wanted to recite some statistics in researching before interviewing you. Citigroup has been in business for 188 years, is in 51 countries, has over $2 trillion in assets, 3,400 branches globally, $250 billion market cap, and you're the largest bank in the world.
Well, I would just modify that somewhat by saying we're in over 100 countries.
Okay.
So which is the most of any international bank.
Well, thank you very much for sharing us your insights. It was
well, thank you for
very
having me.
Thank you very much.